Hello and welcome to the CX Files for March 13th, 2025. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan. I am actually this week, Mark, in Hermosillo, Mexico, where I'm attending the BPO Leadership Summit that's been organized by Alliance BPO. Great friends of ours, great friends of the podcast. And it's going to be truly a phenomenal gathering of individuals from across the world that both Dan Castilla and Juan Kerr have organized and put together.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it's great to get back to Mexico again, I'm sure. I always love going, well, from here it's up there. I always tend to think as a European that it's going down the earth, but of course, that always confuses people.
It does. I remember when I was living in Australia for a bit and I saw the world map as per how an Australian would see it. And it was fascinating to see how Australia was at the top of the map and the rest of the world was more or less upside down, but it's all about perception. And I agree with you. When you think about flying up to Mexico, that's just not something that you would be talking about in North America or Western Europe, but absolutely delighted to be back. I love this country. I haven't been for a couple of years, and it's wonderful just to come back to interact with friends here in Mexico, to catch up with what's going on in the country. Never a dull moment here. And certainly, Mark, from the standpoint of our podcast this week, probably one of the ones that I think our listenership is truly going to enjoy. Never a dull moment over the course of my discussion with three individuals who I thought would be great to get together to pay tribute to International Women's Day. Now, for full disclosure, we are not publishing this podcast, obviously, on IWD, but we did record it right before International Women's Day, and we wanted to get out the podcast as soon as possible. The individuals who I brought on were Sophia Mohammed from the UK, Samar ElShafie from Egypt, and Sabrina Labonte from here in Canada. And the whole idea about the pod was to talk to three female executives under 30 years old to talk a little bit about their experience in our industry, what motivated them to get involved to work in CX, what their views are in terms of how women are faring right now, and what can be done to further empower women to take on leadership roles and to be able to fulfill their career ambitions.
The IWD was actually last Saturday, and I posted an article then, actually on the day itself, on the weekend, just pointing out that again, it's a bit tiring when you look across LinkedIn, that whenever we have one of these days that marks commemoration or a celebration of a certain group of people, every company seems to jump on the bandwagons and say things like Happy International Women's Day or Happy whatever, but without actually ever detailing very much about what they're doing. And I think the only company I can think of that really did a great job of this was Capgemini. If you look at what their boss posted, it actually detailed here, Happy International Women's Day, and here is what we're doing for women who work for Capgemini. And they had a long list of stuff to do with recruiting more women and helping more women to progress within the organization. And I thought that was great because it shows that, here's some real stuff that's actually being done. And I think that this is why we need to publicize conversations like the one that you arranged, because it's just great to hear from people within the CX industry as well. Are people actually being, or are they having their careers facilitated and helped? Or is there a problem, an industry-wide problem here around women being helped into these careers and then helping to maintain and grow within the industry?
Yeah, and I think one of the big takeaways that I got from Sophia, Sabrina, and from Samar is the fact that they feel that they have had some great opportunities. They feel that more could be done in terms of being able to provide women with career opportunities. One thing that I think was important, they were all referencing the need for mentorship in the workplace, both for younger female executives coming into the workplace, but also as those younger female executives take on leadership roles and more responsibility for them to do the same, to try and empower new female recruits into an organization. So I honestly, Mark, I think this podcast speaks for itself. I had a lot of fun recording it. It's truly one of the best ones I had the chance to participate in. So I'm going to suggest that we flip over to the chat with Sabrina Labonte, with Samar ElShafie, and Sophia Mohammed to find out a little bit about their thoughts about being young female executives and future leaders in the CX space. This week's CX Files is really excited to welcome 3 leaders for International Women's Day. Now, I'm conscious that by the time our listeners are hearing this podcast, International Women's Day will have been over for about a week, but we thought it was important to pay tribute to what this day means and what it signifies, especially from the context in the CX space when it comes to the empowerment of females to achieve their career goals and to achieve their objectives. And with that in mind, I thought it was going to be really important to bring on 3 people who I see as future female leaders in the CX space in customer management. So we've got quite an international contingent this morning. We've got joining us from Manchester, Sophia Mohammed. We've got from Alexandria in Egypt, Samar ElShafie. And in my hometown of Montreal, albeit on the West Island, which I'm not sure is technically part of Montreal anymore, Sabrina Labonte. So ladies, great to have you here.
Thank you very much for having us.
Be here.
Great to be here.
Absolutely delighted. So I'm going to ask each one of you to just quickly introduce yourselves, tell us who you're with and what your role is, starting with yourself, Sophia, going back to the top of the introductions I did a few seconds ago.
Yeah, so my name's Sophia. I work for a company called USmart as their client partner. So I will essentially stay with our client from the beginning of their journey. So I will run an RFP, kind of the onboarding process up to the go live. And then I stay with them throughout as well when their operation is live. And I really, try to involve myself in the nitty-gritty of all of our clients just to make sure that everything's going smoothly.
Okay, fantastic. Samar, over to you.
Yeah, okay, so I'm Samar ElShafie. I work with the Octopus Outsourcing right now in Alexandria, Egypt. I've been in the industry for the past 10 years. And at first I started in operations where I used to manage day-to-day operations and people management and people development. And then I moved on to business development and client relations, where my core job right now is to help Octopus growth and make sure that we maintain client relations along the way.
Fantastic. And I would just point out that I visited your site a few weeks ago on my trip to Egypt, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And thank you once again for the warm welcome that you and the rest of the team provided.
Absolutely. It was our pleasure, Peter. Thank you.
So Sabrina, last but not least,
Yes. No pressure. So I'm Sabrina Labonte, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Partnerships with Laivly. We are an automation and AI solution within the contact center space. And I've been in the CX space for about 3.5 years now. Most of my role comprised of running our marketing and event strategy for a couple of years until I took on the partnerships role as well, which means I'm developing out our channel sales and partnership program alongside BPOs, consultants, advisors, and ambassadors in the industry.
Super. Well, thank you very much for the 3 of you for those quick rounds of intros and just descriptions of what you do, and all very impressive in their own right. So I'm going to start with yourself, Samar, and I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about how you got into the CX space. Why did you pick CX to forge a career in as opposed to maybe another industry?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Alexandria, where you visited, Peter. But then I had to move to Cairo because of my college, and I had to move by myself. So my main plan was to pursue a master's in Egyptology because that was my major. and then like go on and start a career as an Egyptologist. But I started as a contact center agent. I thought of it as a temp job in order for me to pay rent and cover my expenses. But just a couple of months into the job, I figured out that my personality it is actually shaped by this job. It changed me in different ways. I started to become more patient, more attentive to details. And for me, it was like a learning experience where I get to deal with people around the world, learn about their culture. And then step by step, I got promoted up the operations ladder. I was still an undergrad back then, but I got more exposed to other aspects of the industry, the financial management of it, the leadership, client management. And I honestly enjoyed the idea of helping people advance their careers, creating more job opportunities, and just passing on what I've learned at the same time. So back then, that's where I took the decision that I want to continue my career in this field, and I don't want to go back and do the Egyptology master's anymore. I want to do a master's in business and get my MBA and continue on from here.
I just love the is it going to be CX? Is it going to be Egyptology? That is like one of the coolest career choices I've ever heard, Samar. Thank you very much. Sabrina, let's get a little bit of background on yourself. What prompted that move towards the CX space a few years ago?
Yeah, I think my story is a little similar to a lot of people's in the industry in the sense that in some way, without ever planning on it, I found myself here, but I actually loved it enough to want to stay for the long run. So I joined Laivly, which was the first company that I worked with within the CX space, and I'm still with today, about 3.5 years ago. And I've been in the tech startup space for about a decade before that. And I was recruited to come into the CX industry without knowing much about it. And to be completely transparent at the beginning, I remember thinking, well, customer experience, what does that really mean on a grand scale? And as far as I could see it, it really meant contact centers and seemed limited at that. And at the beginning, that seemed like a bit of an archaic industry. But as I got to know it and got to know the company, I got quite excited about the space quite quickly just because I realized how much space for innovation and how much space for human empathy there was in technological environment. And from the background that I was coming from, that was really exciting to be able to have a part to play in changing an industry, with technology, but for the better of human use and not just to be completely replacing humans. So once I got into it, once I got to know people, I realized quite quickly that this is an industry, and I say this very often, but I still stand by it, over 3 years later, is that we work in an industry of people helping people help people. And you will not thrive here in any sort of role if you do not have humans at the center of your focus, no matter which side of the, brand, BPO, technology vendor you are on. At the end of the day, we're all people trying to help other people help clients. And that's a really cool space to be in. And it's something that I resonated with very quickly. And that's what's made me get excited about the industry and certainly what's made me want to stick around and grow within the industry.
That's fantastic. And I take your point about like many people, you sort of just end up here. Somebody who I have a lot of respect for, Jim Farnsworth, has a saying. He said that the CX industry is like the Hotel California. You can check out, but you never leave. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. There's so many people I've met who have accidentally entered this space, but just don't want to go. And Sophia, when I think about yourself, there's something of a family affair within the CX industry. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, you definitely are. So I obviously work for my dad, who's been in the industry for kind of over 30 years now, I believe. Um, and yeah, and he kind of I followed in his footsteps, I guess, and entered into the family business. And again, being transparent, I think that could have been in anything, but it was the kind of thing that pulled me towards it, and being a part of this family business was the fact that he was transforming, or USmart was transforming people's kind of operations of brands that I knew and loved. And I would, this was when I was living at home. I would hear things around the house when he would have conversations, and it would make me really kind of interested. And I was always intrigued and always asking questions, especially by the fact that you could actually, have the ability to drive actual tangible results through providing obviously a good customer experience. And then when I joined, I very kind of quickly realized that, we were working with global brands and we were essentially having discussions both with partners and clients and adding value to a customer's journey. And it was definitely very amazing to see in some instances and some clients that we've had. So that's kind of what's kept me here, I guess, the ability to add value into someone's kind of day-to-day journey with a brand.
That's amazing. And for full disclosure, I've known your dad for quite some time and think the world of him and think the world of the family. And it is truly great to have that second generation of Mohammeds who are involved in the CX space. So
Thank you
you are
for
more
that.
than welcome. When I think a little bit about the career journey that each of you have had so far in CX, and Sophia, I'm going to stick with you on this. Since you've been working as a professional in customer experience management, what has been your impression about how this sector has been accommodating towards ambitious young females who are looking to try and forge a career in what we're doing?
Yeah, so I think again, total transparency. A couple of years ago, I remember attending my first conference, and yeah, it was a lot of men, especially older men. And I think this industry has definitely been a male-dominated industry for a long time. But what I have seen over the years, like I am really happy to actually say this, is that the more conferences or events that I attend, there are more and more women, especially on panels who are in kind of CX leadership positions as well. And I think it's becoming quite an empowering space for ambitious females as well. And I see it more and more on LinkedIn as well as kind of events. But the rise of, ambitious females who are, leaders in the CX space, is amazing. And it's something that is becoming more and more common to see.
That is good news. And it really, I think, is belying something that I've been picking up for the last little while. And Sabrina, when we think about how there has been the proverbial glass ceiling that we've all heard about, that women can get to a certain point in an industry and then it sort of ends there. There's sort of that limit. Is this something that you think is getting shattered? Is the glass ceiling a reality, or are more and more women just forcing their way through, rightly so?
Peter, I do think two things can be true, and this is one of them. I do think we are lucky to be in an industry that is becoming more open to female leadership. But I think at the same time, like any space, especially on the technology side that I've experienced, there is still very much a male-dominated environment. And women are still unfortunately not able to step up on the same stage as men from the get-go. And I think that there's a few things playing into that. First, I do think, we are an industry, like I said, of people leading people, to help other people. And I think that that requires a lot of empathy. And if you look a lot of careers, a lot of environments where women work that are highly relying on empathy, it's not particularly surprising that you have a high concentration of women working in those roles. Whether we think of teachers, if we think of nurses, and we're looking at the CX space as an environment where people are helping others. So in that sense, I do think we are in an innovation that is welcoming and encouraging for female qualities, especially when it comes to care and empathy and patience. However, it is an industry that is becoming more and more dominated by technology, fast-moving trends, AI, and that does tend to be a very fast-paced, competitive environment that is male-dominated. All that being said, however, all that innovation tends to bring young blood, in a sense, to the industry. And the way things have been done in the contact center and customer experience space for the last couple of decades changed drastically during COVID and has changed very, very fast since then as well, with the advent of technology taking over various aspects of people's jobs and how companies are operating in the space. So I think two things can be true to answer your question. I think there is definitely still a glass ceiling that most women believe believe is, unachievable or they can't hit. But at the same time, I think we're at a pivotal point in time where this industry is ripe for change and open to young leaders, especially young female leaders.
And that's a really, really interesting take on it, Sabrina. Thank you. Samar, as we think a little bit about your own rise to the role that you're in. Sabrina touched on something that I think is really important, the fact that there is generational change happening, that we are renewing a new set of leadership within different organizations. Something that struck me when I visited your site in Alexandria a few weeks ago was the extent to which on the senior management team, there was a significant number of female executives who had taken on leadership roles, who had taken on very responsible, very important roles within the growth of Octopus, which we've identified as one of the BPOs to watch in 2025 and beyond. Can you talk a little bit about what that dynamic is like and how Octopus has been able to foster such a culture of empowering women who want to get ahead and want to forge a quality career in CX?
Absolutely, Peter. So also to Sabrina and Sophia's point, so in the past, we did observe that it was mainly male-dominated industry, that you can spot fewer women than men in leadership roles. Right now, as the industry matured and as it evolved, we all come to the conclusion that this is not the way the industry should work. It's a diverse industry. We deal with a lot of people who are from different cultures, from different genders. So it's very important for us to adopt this as well. Basically, what we do at Octopus is that we make sure our policies and all of the evaluations we have are competency-based, not gender-based. There are no bias in the process. And as long as it's competency-based, so everyone would have a equal opportunity for them to work on their competencies, work on their skills, and get the roles they want. On the other side, we also tend to have like an awareness program because of all the stereotypes that happen. There are some unconscious bias that might be in the company. So we make sure that we raise this awareness, that everyone is oriented on the process and how it goes and what competencies are needed, and that our development programs are open to everyone for them to participate in. So this is basically what's helping us to make sure that we get the best talents, whether they're men or women, we get the best talents in the role. We make sure that the right people are the ones who get promoted and are in the decision-making circle. And this is what we're adopting to make sure that this stays on for a long time. And it's not just a one-time thing. Also, our compliance team has a role. They do their regular audits, just audits on gender ratios to spot any discrepancies that needs further investigation. They do audits on payroll to make sure that pay is equal and there is no like discrepancies there as well. So with their regular audits, we spot some opportunities we need to work on, and we go on and develop these.
So, Samar, that's great. You've given some really good ideas there about what an organization can do to help women achieve their potential and to make sure that there's an awareness of the need for equal opportunities within the scope of CX. Sophia, throwing it back to you, you talked a little bit a while ago about how you've seen a dynamic changing at CX-related events. And I would agree with you. I think there's been a definite change. You see many more women who are not just taking roles attending conferences, but also chairing conferences, participating in these different types of events, which I think is so important in terms of bringing a fully rounded picture. From your perspective, Sophia, what do you think that CX organizations can do in order to, touching on what Samar was talking about, help more awareness of the need for equity within the workplace and to help women achieve their potential?
Yeah, so I think honestly, I think mentorship is really kind of essential. And having a woman, come into a CX company, having a mentor who's open to change and open to kind of listening and developing processes and essentially kind of moving with the times is so critical, I think, to allowing women to grow within their kind of CX roles. You just need to be allowed to develop, your skill set in an environment that encourages you to suggest change and ask questions and question things. So yeah.
I think that that's a really, really good answer. And Sabrina, what about yourself? Any advice that you would have for an organization, whether it's in the tech side, whether it's a captive CX or an outsourcer, in terms of what they need to be thinking about to foster a more equal workplace and one that really
Mhm.
provides the opportunities for everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it is a bit of a two-way street. I think if you want to succeed in any industry and you want your voice heard, you have to speak up. So my main advice, goes both on the employee space as young female leaders, but also on organizations is encouraging people to speak up, keeping that open door policy, keeping the floor, welcoming to new ideas, different ways of thinking, and actually sitting down and thinking of those things through, right? It's new ideas to the table coming from a fresh perspective are often great ones. And they might come off as a little bit different, but there's a reason and a perspective that goes into that. And oftentimes those are some of the best ideas. So on both sides of the table, I think is keeping that door open for people to speak up, to share ideas, to suggest new ways of doing things. Um, the second thing I'd say is really encouraging employees and young leaders to get involved in the industry. And this builds up on Samar and Sophia, what you've both said, but seeking mentorship and getting involved in the community, learning from leaders who are on different sides of the table, whether you're a technology vendor, a BPO, a brand, understanding what their day to day is and learning from the things that they've been throughout, especially over the decades as things have changed in this industry. So I think, encouraging people to step outside of the role that they're in, outside of the box that they're in, and especially outside of the company that they're in is one of the best ways for people to grow and develop a perspective that's outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah, and you touched on something in the first part of your comments there. I think that having those roundtable opportunities where people can share ideas and new perspectives, different perspectives is so important because I don't know if this is just a CX thing. I suspect it's not, but I think probably there's a tendency, no matter what the industry, for confirmation bias. People like to sit and basically sit and share ideas that they all agree with because it's easy that way. When you get new ideas, maybe that are disruptive on the table, that might ruffle a few feathers. But in the net long run, an organization is going to benefit from some of those new and different ideas.
Absolutely. And I think any change is uncomfortable. I think no industry or, industry leaders are ever particularly excited about things changing so quickly, but for things to improve and for things to keep up, they have to change. So I think it's a bit of excitement and a bit of fear at the same time. And I think you can see that in the industry as a whole. There are some people who've been in the space for a very long time and are very comfortable with how things are. But you've got a whole new wave of leaders, some are young, some are not so young, some are very seasoned, but thinking in a different way than the industry has operated. And I sense that often attending events, speaking to new companies, is the excitement and the fear of change really can go hand in hand.
Yeah, I actually tend to think that the more long in the tooth or more seasoned, as you put it, Sabrina. I notice that's a very diplomatic way of saying someone who's getting older. But the more seasoned that somebody might be, probably the more resistant they are going to be to change. And that's something that I think needs to shift in terms of a mindset. And all of you have brought up this expression mentorship. And I think that is so important. So I want to finish off here imagining that the three of you ladies are mentors to a recent female graduate or somebody who is joining a CX firm, a woman joining a CX firm. And what advice, starting with you, Samar, would you give them in terms of progressing their own career within this industry?
Yeah, okay. So, Peter, honestly, I would start by giving them an advice on to just that they don't succumb to the imposter syndrome. They don't ever feel like they don't deserve this or that, or that they won't fit in because of them being fresh grads or females or so on. I would advise them to shift that focus and energy into like enhancing their skills and competency and into working on achieving their milestones to whatever the goal they dream of. And if they're ever faced with injustice, for them to be very vocal about it and to speak up for their right, just like Sabrina was saying, and also to stand up for themselves and make sure that they get their rights out of this situation. So this is basically just an advice on how their mindset should go when dealing with any situations in the industry that they find challenging, or whenever they're planning their future and career in this industry, or whatever the industry they want. Honestly, it doesn't only count for this industry. It counts for everything that they want to achieve.
I think that's amazing, amazing advice. I'll pass the baton to yourself, Sophia.
Yeah, so I think kind of in this industry, the key thing is building strong relationships. Collaboration, I think, is really, really important, whether that's with a tech partner or another BPO or someone else in the same role as you in another company. But I think collaboration is so important. So I think building that strong network from day one can be really, really valuable. And seeking feedback, being open to growth and again being patient within yourself because you're not going to get everything right from day one, but seeking that feedback and being open to receiving it as well, and will just kind of allow you to develop and grow. And I think just being curious, asking questions, being interested in, new technologies or anything that might be going on within the industry, because there's always something new and there's always something that, even the most kind of seasoned professional is still learning about because, it's only just kind of come onto the block. And I think that is just they're the key kind of points that I would give as advice to someone that was joining the industry.
Very, very salient points. Sabrina, you get the final word today.
Yeah, that's exciting. I mean, to build up on Samar's point, the imposter syndrome, I think, is very real in many industries, but especially as a young female leader, it's easy to question yourself if you really fit in there, if you do belong, if you should be there, if your ideas are worthwhile. And I definitely struggled with it at first, and I can't say that some days I still don't. But adding to Samar's point, I think getting involved with the community and seeing other leaders who've been in your shoes before, you realize that that's not an experience that's unique to you. Men, women, old, young, I think most people at some point in time go through that, and realizing that it's a normal feeling and you're not alone helps in a way break out of it. And for myself, I've always really truly believed you will not grow and you will not experience life in a comfortable environment. And if you're seeking that, you have to be ready to be uncomfortable. And a big part of that is, going out there and putting yourself out there and asking for what you want, putting yourself in the situations where you're going to learn and you're going to see and experience new things. And, adding to that, I really think that if something means a lot to you, do not accept no for an answer. And of course, there's a, subtle way of approaching that theory, but really chasing the things that you want to get involved with and want to learn and not giving up on them the moment they get tough is important to remind yourself on the days that are challenging, and reminding yourself why you're doing what you're doing and what your end goal and what you're trying to learn is keeps me a little bit on track on days that are, can be a little more challenging. But I'd say at the same time, adding to Samar and Sophia's point, that old adage that your network is your net worth is very, very true. And I think that you can learn a lot and be in a lot of different um, experiences where you grow and meet great people if you put yourself out there. But it is a reciprocal thing, and you've got to give to get. So I'd highly encourage any young leaders to put themselves out there, even when they feel like they do not belong in a new space, a new environment. Don't be scared to speak up, but you've got to give to be able to receive at the same time.
Very sage advice from three very sage individuals. And I will say that this has been one of the most interesting podcasts that I've had the chance to record since we've been doing the CX files. So from Manchester, Sophia, from Alexandria, Samar, and from here in Montreal, Sabrina, thank you all for taking some time to chat with us today, to share your wisdom, and I think giving the listenership in the CX community quite a lot to think about. What the heck was that?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Was
I think it
Okay.
was on my side, but it's something in the street. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, that'll be our blooper outtake for when Mark does the editing. All right, so all right, starting 5 seconds now.